Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. We are going to be talking about program design, template versus personalized workouts today. This is going to be an absolute cracker of a show. Strap yourself in, get ready. Like Vasquez in Aliens, let's rock. If you're new to the tribe, we got Rich behind the mix. Rad is not at the table with me today. I've got Phil at the table with me today. Yani Baumeister, and we are Unity Gym experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unify Movement System, the only program effectively balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. Get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. Today, we are going to take a deep dive into why those two are so important. And guys, remember, all this week until the weekend, you have a very, very unique opportunity to jump on and get a 50% lifetime discount. Use the link in the description. Before we get started, big warm welcome to everyone joining us on the live stream to the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group. Remember, leave a comment, let us know where you're tuning in from, and we'll send you back some love. Anyone can join that group and interact. Just search UMS Movement Mastermind on Facebook. Lastly, shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit the like button and support the channel. Subscribe if you like what you see. As I said earlier, I got none other than Phil White from ADPT Physio joining us today. We also have Richie behind the mix. He may have a mic. I'm not sure if he does. How are you today, Phil?
Good, mate. For those watching on the video, you just get to see the other side of my face today because I'm in Rad's chair. So
Big deal.
It's an exciting reason to come across to the UMS Movement Mastermind group and watch this live.
Yeah, that's right. And if you are, remember, guys, smash up that like button and let us know who you are, where you are from, and ask us some programming questions. We love to have a discussion on these podcasts. We will get to you. I know we go off on a bit of a rant. With Stephen Pellegrino, thank you, brother. Yeah. Nice to know that we're talking to someone out there in our podcast universe.
Yeah, exactly. No, we were excited about this topic. We were chatting before the show, and it's very easy to get carried away because it's a topic we like, but now we can get stuck in, hey?
That's right. So what we're really going to talk about today is the difference between template programs like our Foundations program, our Technique Optimizer that we're in the middle of production for, and our Strength Maximizer, which I already have as a template program that I use a couple of times a year. And we've had Alex Seabrook from our UMS Online Coaching group run through it last year and loved the program. It's essentially a hybrid version or a rip-off from the late Charles Poliquin's super accumulation program. God, I got my tongue tied there. And a lot of our friends use it periodically. It's essentially just prescribed overreaching versus what we call our progressions program. And our progressions program is actually sort of not like a set program. It is a combination of our structural balance blueprint, which is our assessments, and also our exercise glossary, which we teach in a progressive manner, and it's really designed as a build your own journey.
Yeah, it's a framework to get anything you need out of your training by following some fundamental rules, but adapting it to what you need.
That's exactly right. And so, you might be wondering, and this is where we're going to lead the conversation, why do we not just assess everybody when they first start out? Why have our Foundations program and our Technique Optimizer, for instance? So the Foundations program is where we like to encourage everybody to start their journey with us. It's a general preparations program, meaning it's training in preparation for training. And our Technique Optimizer program is the bridge between the Foundations and the progressions. And that's where we introduce all of the fundamental movements and put it into a nice program which sort of helps to grease the groove and, as it's aptly named, optimize your technique in those fundamental movements. So I'm going to throw this over to Phil because he explains this really, really well. Why we choose, after 17 years of coaching people, and we've done it very differently in the past, why we choose now not to run people through assessment week when they first start with us, because it's really important that you guys understand this.
Yeah, it's the idea of noise versus signal. So basically, whenever you're collecting data on something, like you've got to know what you're going to do with that data, with that information. And when you're looking at technique from someone, it's going to really vary the results you get. So how much weight you can lift, or how effectively you can do the movement, how much range you can get if you're still learning the movement. It's like, I've since sort of stopping playing ultimate frisbee, where that was my main sport, where I really sort of just hammered throwing technique and got to a point where I was really quite proficient. When I've got into ocean swimming and I was learning to swim, I felt like some swims when I was starting out, I'd feel amazing, and then the next time I'd just feel terrible, and my pace would be like way off. Because when you're going through learning a new technique, you're going to have loads and loads of variability in how you're performing that movement, and that variation in how you're performing the movement is also then going to have a direct impact on how much force you can produce while doing the movement, the pace you can do, or in this case, with lifting weights, how much weight you can lift. So the reason why you wouldn't just we don't do it anymore like an assessment straight away when you first come in, is because if someone's just learning to do a low bar squat for the first time, I guess in the assessment protocol we do the high bar squat and a bench press. Like if you haven't learned how to do a barbell bench press in a comp style sort of powerlifting style bench press where you're getting all the the right stability through your whole body, if you're just kind of jumping under a bar and just pushing the weight away without any of that technique in there, then once you've gone through then a bit of testing, and then once you've done a bit of practice, like you're not going to have a good insight into how much you've actually improved, because your technique was all over the place. So the information you're getting is just what we call noise, where it's not useful information. And on the other hand, if you have great technique and you've gone through that development program of the technique optimizer and the general prep program, then when we're then testing, you get a good signal of what is what to work on, where you're at, and we can use that information, that data, to direct what's next.
Yeah. So to be completely simplify what we're trying to say here, when you are new to a movement, and this is the really key point that I want everyone to understand, you get a lot of data when you assess that movement, because you don't it's not just about lifting weight in the movement. It's about like creating neural pathways and muscle mapping and sequencing and coordination, intermuscular coordination and intermuscular coordination, and most of that's sort of just the brain and nervous system figuring things out, Yeah,
and also the context in which you feel confident to push a movement as well. Like when you're just starting something, like I've been watching my partner train down at a new CrossFit gym down in Jervis Bay, where she's living full time now, and I'm alternating between. It's 3 hours south, and she's having to go at all these complex movements like cleans and snatches, and there's just doesn't have any confidence there, so obviously isn't going to progress faster, and that's not a true expression of her strength in those movements. She just doesn't know how to do the movements yet. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so the goal at that point, and where you're going to get your biggest improvement, where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck, investment in time and things like that, is doubling down on those movements. So then if we scale it back a lot more, we know what movements produce or yield the best benefits in strength and flexibility and fitness as well. We know what exercises and modalities of exercise are going to improve fitness the best. So what we want to do at that point is, if we've identified those movements, and we call them the fundamental movements in the Unified Movement System, but most good strength coaches use exactly the same movements. We don't really do anything different at this stage, because all we're trying to do at this point in someone's journey, before we dabble in calisthenics, before we dabble in gymnastic strength skills, before we do anything like that, we just want to make someone strong, flexible, and fit. That's the foundation. That's the bench. That's the benchmark we set, so that can be deployed into a hobby, a sport, CrossFit, football, soccer, baseball, cricket, basketball, whatever it is that you want to do. Rock climbing, we have some people. Yoga, really advanced yogis we have that come here and want to get stronger. So before we start mucking around with any of those sports, all of that, we want to set that benchmark, that foundation of strength and flexibility and fitness, of course. And we know what fundamental movements yield the best results. So in the very, very beginning, all we want to do is improve one's skill and ability to do those fundamental movements. Now, we know how to break those down. We know what's required to do a good barbell back squat. We know what's required to do a good barbell deadlift. We know what's required to do a good barbell bench press. We know what's good to do a good chin up. We know, we know all these things. And so we can produce a templated program that's going to take a standard person, or even an athlete, and it's going to improve the markers that we need to give them the best chance possible to do a great squat or to do a great bench press. And all those benchmark movements are fundamental movements that we've just sort of spoken about in a safe way, and produce the best sort of force, produce the best maximal strength, produce the best range of movement, all of those things. And so that's why we create template programs. When we've got a specific goal and we know what type of person we're catering for, then we can create what's referred to as a template program.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that, it does work for someone who's, just started training and is totally new to the movements. But also, like, if you have been training in the gym for a long time and you've tried different, strength modalities along the way, and you've maybe worked in or you've trained in a gym for a while, like, there's still so much benefit to just, like, targeting these fundamental movements and really nailing them. Like, and some people kind of see a template program and are like, oh, I'm a unique snowflake and I need something that's like exactly 100% for me. But with humans, like, we aren't, they don't roll a dice when you're born about like which direction your joints face and how many arms and legs you get. Like, we all have this, like, obviously there are some people with disabilities that make things a bit different, but there's like, humans are pretty similar for the most part in terms of this side of things. So there are some fundamental movements that everyone can get so much benefit from, really getting that technique right, getting the loading parameters right, and spending just a bit of time getting the kind of early gains you get as someone with a young training age. So it doesn't mean you have to be young biological age, but rather you're just getting into this style of training, and you'll get so much benefit from just doing some fundamental things.
The other good thing about template programs, and there are a time and a place for them, and Stephen Pellegrino's said a great comment here with some real good insight, which we're going to use to frame when there is a definite time I wouldn't suggest using a templated program, but the time and the place for template programs are very, very clear when you've got a specific goal, when you're working with a certain type of being, in this case a human being, who isn't training for a very specific role or sport. And even then, a general prep program can still be templated. And the good thing and the benefit with a templated general prep program or a technique optimizer program is that when it's a systemized construct like a template, you collect an immense amount of data that is far superior to randomized programs or even personalized programs at this stage, because you've got a truckload of people moving through a similar program format, and so the data is very reliable that you collect from that, so you can make changes to the program or you can influence the individuals going through it with a lot more collective data than normal, and that's where the magic really starts to come into play using this style of programming.
Yeah, we've been joking recently about like we've had a certain kombucha drink come through as a test for our gym to use, and it's got on the label it says science backed, and we're sort of having a bit of a laugh about how science can be kind of thrown around as a marketing tool, and it's like so important to use science and evidence based kind of practice in not only like physio but also in strength and conditioning. But I think one of the traps that people often fall into is trying to find the latest and greatest and the newest research and just throw it at a program and trying all these new exciting ideas. But what's often lost there is the actual scientific method approach to training and seeing results, where with scientific method, it's all about keeping a lot of variables the same and then changing, targeted things to see the results. So with a template program where you're following these fundamental movements and building up that skill, it means that when it comes to actually getting assessments, when we get to the point where we are doing assessment, that's where we can use the scientific method of then changing variables and seeing the results in terms of the and then building your personalized programs from the results. So
I love that, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's like it's all science backed or results based. Almost became just these popular terms that we use in marketing, almost as much as like paleo did in nutrition or vegan did in nutrition or whatever. It's just a very, very trendy thing to say. So if we sort of, I feel like we've sort of framed quite well when a template program is really useful, when you've got a specific goal. In our case, the specific goal is to make people competent in a series of fundamental movements. The fundamental movements that are used to develop maximal strength, speed, power, development, flexibility, these things, they don't change. Like they've been around for a long time, and we know that they work, and they work for just about every type of sporting activity on the planet. I'm not 100% sure you need them for curling or...
Yeah, you still got squatting patterns to get down.
Anyway, but most movements that you need explosive force or strength in. And so we know the fundamental movements. We've chosen the fundamental movements that we use in the UMS, and so we know that we want to get people competent in those movements. Then we want to get them to be really, really good, just not just safe, not just able to do them without hurting themselves, but really competent in the form and technique. So that by the time we start testing to collect data to personalize the program, it's going to be very true data. There's not going to be noise. Yeah. It's going to be something that we can actually use and deploy, and we're not going to be overwhelmed by it. We're not going to get analysis paralysis.
Yeah, we're getting signal.
We're getting signal, that's right. Then from that point on, we use a templated program only to break through strength plateaus, and it's a prescribed overreaching program, and quite frankly the actual exercises used in the program can be interchanged to a degree.
Can I just briefly make a point on the technique versus sort of the program side of things as well, because we talked about this a bit a while ago, but basically, like, if you have a perfect program but terrible technique, you'll run into a ceiling very quickly, and you'll likely hurt yourself. But if you have like really great technique and a suboptimal program, like, you'll almost certainly make good gains, because you'll be still loading safely and doing the movement. You'll be able to express the most strength through there. So it's just a really important thing to understand, that like getting that technique right is going to be what.
I think what you've just said there is actually more important than you gave it credit for.
I don't often interrupt you, Yanni, but I feel like I need to.
That is such an important point, and it's funny, when I think about friends of mine who really get tangible results with strength development and things like that, like Sebastian, like us. It's alarming how simple the selection of exercises that we use to produce those results are. What becomes the science is the way we manage load, and the way we make sure that people aren't overloading their body, and therefore making calculated changes workout to workout, week to week, cycle to cycle, year to year, even to continually progress.
Yeah, and when we talk about load, we talk about the macro loading side of things, which is the programming, but the micro loading side of things is just as important and potentially more important for a lot of people, where the micro loading is basically like, how are you moving your body to and which structures are you putting under force and under load. So that technique side of things cannot be understated.
Yeah, that's right. And so then the only other templated program that we've got is what we call our Strength Maximizer, which is a prescribed overreaching program. Essentially doubles the volume that you do in a 2-week period. It's a very short-term prescription. You literally do it for 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, you do 9 workouts a week, so you're doing 18 workouts in 2 weeks, and it's intense, and that's what it's designed to do by design. It's designed to overload the body and, create massive amounts of stimulus that your body then reacts and responds to and adapts to. And then the most important part of that prescription is a 5-day rest or recovery that you have after the program. And it's funny, I've done it with a number of people who just totally said, no, I'm not stopping, I'm not resting, and they completely negate from the benefit of the program. They just keep training, and their body doesn't actually have any superaccumulation effect, and Stephen has said here in the comments, I was considering the strength program, the Strength Maximizer program, but seemed like I still had some serious imbalances. And this is the thing. Doing a prescribed overreaching program, if you've got any issues in the body that you haven't sort of managed well, or you haven't sort of been able to, overcome, they will surface like big time when you're overtraining, because any sort of weakness in the body is going to be put under an immense amount of stress.
Yeah, because you've got to remember, when you are getting stronger, what you're doing is you're working within there's sort of a buffer around like the top level, like the amount of intensity and amount of volume, the amount of load you can put through your body. And so if you're in a fairly like healthy, uninjured sort of state, then that buffer is generally going to be bigger. And by pushing yourself, changing it like drastically increasing your volume for a short amount of time will, should stay within that buffer. But when you're sort of in a state where you're maybe a little bit, you've got some niggly injuries, or you've already sort of overloading a certain structure because of maybe the microloading side of things, maybe you're not quite getting the technique right in certain aspects. Like if your buffer is then shrunk, if you add in a targeted overreach program, so this particular strength template program, that's likely to just push you a little bit above that buffer and can really expose some issues. So
well, the reality is that when you're overreaching, you're not healing, and like you're actually stalling or delaying or interfering with the healing process, because the program has you train effectively the same muscles every day and on 3 days of the week twice. And it's a whole body workout. There's no training split per se. You only actually do 3 workouts. You do 2 workouts on one day, and then you do 1 workout the next day. But every day you're doing versions of a squat, versions of a press, versions of a pull, versions of a chin up, and it really, really overloads the body and overstresses the body, and you're interfering with this healing process. So if you've already got something that's trying to figure itself out in your body, then it just gets absolutely obliterated when you do this program. And most people that I find try it prematurely end up quitting it after a few days because they're just in pain. Something surfaced that they hadn't quite dealt with, and it's just become real bad again,
Yeah.
And it's one surefire way to turn like the beginning of a tendinopathy into a severe tendinopathy.
Yeah, and I think where a lot of people can kind of get this wrong is you almost like a doubling your volume, but you don't necessarily then look at the amount of intensity you're doing. And so often people kind of go in a bit high and then try and build from there. But really, you've it is about target overreaching. But the variable we're really trying to mess with here is the volume, not necessarily the intensity. So you do need to strip the intensity back a little bit to to get through without having that abusive load, which is what we talk about, really sets off tendinopathies. So
that's right. And so the last thing I want to finish here on today is the reason and the importance behind steering away from template programs, and when templated programs can become a real problem, which is if you continually do them. Any templated program, irrespective of what the purpose of doing it is, first and foremost, what I'll say is if you're gonna use a templated program like our foundations program, like our technique optimizer, like our strength maximizer, you better bloody know why you're using it. There has to be a very clear reason, and this is my problem. The problem I have with templated programs that are available online is that, and we have a lot more than that we sell as a standalone. Like we have our gymnastics rings masterclass. We have all our masterclasses, our handstand masterclass. They're all templated programs, but they've got a very specific goal. Learn to do a handstand, learn to do a muscle up, learn to develop stability in the shoulders using gymnastics rings, learn to, we got a number of other ones that I'm even forgetting. They're very specific. They're strength specification programs, and they have a very specific goal. But, if you go out and get a bodybuilding program that's a templated program of some bodybuilder who's used the program themselves and then, deploy that, and then deploy another templated program, then deploy another, and you get into this cycle of just using someone else's program templates, you're never at any point assessing what your body actually needs. And you can run off in a direction that's completely wrong for what your body needs based on the environment you've exposed it to, based on your previous injury history, based on your genetics and what you're more prone to, stimulating in the body. Some people are very quad dominant in their squat and they need to really bring up their glute strength. We're working with a friend of ours at Unity at the moment who falls under that category. And if you just plow off on a leg bodybuilding program and you're doing heaps of leg press and heaps of leg extensions and all these very quad dominant movements, and you've already got a really quad dominant movement pattern, you can really stuff yourself up. You can create really, really bad imbalances in the body that can affect posture, it can affect performance, it can increase the risk of injury, it can create more joint instability and glide. There's all these things that you can do at your detriment if you're just taking templated programs off the shelf and deploying them.
And while I did talk about before that, you don't roll the dice on which direction your joints face and how many limbs you get, people do have massive variability in how they respond to training. And I think it's really important to understand that, there's some people who are going to be like over responders to a training stimulus. There are going to be people who are under responders to a training stimulus. So what that means is like some people will do a certain amount of work and they'll get they'll progress really quickly, whereas other people will do that same amount of work, same amount of, they get all of the recovery right, they're getting the nutrition right, but they just won't adapt as well as some other people. Like, you just do have that variability, and so that's where this idea of signal is so important, where you've moved from this template program which had a very specific goal, and now with the personalized workouts, which is what the UMS is all about, the online coaching, is you learn to get that feedback, you learn to read that signal, and it directs you into what you want to do next. And the other really important thing is, we all have different interests and we all have different goals, both short-term and long-term, and I'm as someone who wants to do a lot of beach volleyball and surfing while also training the gym, I'm going to have a very different program to someone like Yani or Rad, for an example. Well, especially Rad, who is so focused on calisthenics goals. So if I just have the same template, follow the same template UMS, or any template program, then I'm not going to get that specificity element of my particular training goals. So that's where understanding how to do this really well, and all the self-educating you're doing by listening to us speak, will hopefully help you really understand how to build your own program and achieve your goals.
That's exactly right. And the other reason why a assessment criteria like the Structural Balance Blueprint and Build Your Own Program, personalising your workouts, the other place that it's really, really important is if you do play a sport. Because if you play a sport, there's usually going to be a lot of specificity and a lot of specialisation, skill development in that sport, where in and of itself it can create an imbalance. Like, think of a tennis player, that's constantly serving with one side of the body.
My right shoulder from beach volleyball is like I'm struggling to.
you can really create an imbalance just through your sport, and so that's when it's really important that when you're training, you're assessing what your body needs to stay in balance. Because if you get too far out of balance, every athlete is a little bit out of balance, but if you get too far out of balance, you can cause yourself problems, and it can affect your performance, and it can lead to long-term issues down the track. A lot of injury, a lot of pain. I've worked with ex-tennis players, and they're the people that come to mind, because I've worked with 2 ex-professional tennis players who had really intense issues after they retired from playing tennis, because one of them even created this severe dominant side scoliosis that started to affect the way their like posture and spine sat. They had this crazy twist, and it was developed through their 20 years of playing competitive tennis, and so yeah, that's another really great reason why it would be a good idea to adopt a program where you are regularly assessing. You got a benchmark, you assess, you go off, sprint in one direction on a program, then you come back, reassess. Okay, whoops, I need to go back this way a little bit. Sprint in that direction, come back, reassess, and you just keep, and that, you can't always be perfectly in balance, and no one ever will, but you'll at least be heading in the right direction. And that's what we really, really urge everybody to do. Templated programs, if you know exactly why you're using it, they have a place, but they're certainly not something that you should just adopt mainstream and just do all the time. Anyway, guys, we're going to bring that in for a landing. We're going to jump over and do our daily group coaching call, and then tomorrow we're going to be going deeper into this, and we're going to be talking about program design, and then bringing it in for a landing on Friday. So I hope you can join us. I hope you got something out of that, and we will see you tomorrow. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.